Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel. It is my pre-Metrocon recording day, which means at this time, I do not know where in my schedule this is going to fall. I think right now it's a Saturday? Sunday? Question mark? I can't remember offhand, but nevertheless, we are here back doing another tier list. A while back, just like over a week ago, we did Universe 2.0 with all the brand new molds that they've released for that series, but now it's time to do repaints because more than half of that line was repaints. And there's more than I remembered. There's actually quite a bit more than I remember. So, for the sake of making this a little bit quicker, so we're not taking all day here, I have excluded the big multi-packs of Legends and Minicons. I've excluded the individual Minicon releases. I have excluded G1 reissues and the odd Masterpiece toy here and there. We are going to focus more on normal retail-style figures. We'll throw some oddballs just for the sake of fun, and also because I think they are notable. But for the most part, I wanted to keep this down like below 40 so we're not here all day. Sound fair? Okay, I think that's fair. So, we're going to begin with Acid Storm, and Acid Storm kicked off just like this lovely run of green Seekers, which I enjoy quite a bit. The original Acid Storm is a little bit more unique with a nice camouflage deco, which was unique to the Seekers at the time. We hadn't seen that before. And the overall color palette does manage to look different than your standard Seeker. He does have the traditional trimmings like the black head, but he also doesn't really have gray to him. He has this kind of like slate blue going on instead. So it does stand out quite a bit, and is quite good looking as a result. I'm bopping him up to premium price. I think that's a very strong start for Universe here in this list. We move on to Blades, and Blades is already one of my favorite molds. It's Cybertron Evac, so you're going to do it in black, red, and white. It's going to work, because it's a very hard color scheme to get wrong. And it does work really, really well. I always really like this toy in the Blades colors. I don't know why it hits as hard as it does, but it just does. I think that's our first Holy Grail. We're very, very quickly jumping to the Holy Grail tier. I think that mold works really, really well in those colors. It might just be that mold is just really, really good at taking on recolors. Because I got news for you. We ain't done. We ain't done with this mold yet. We move on to Blaster, and this is that unfortunate thing where just about any Soundwave mold had to be Blaster at some point because they really didn't want to bother making a brand new mold for someone who's going to do exactly what Soundwave does. So he is very forced into a Soundwave mold with no new head whatsoever, making it kinda awkward. The color scheme works okay on the figure, but it just doesn't feel right. It just does not feel like Blaster. I'm putting him middle, somewhere in the middle, because it's kind of there, kind of not. You know, there's just way too much of Cybertron Soundwave. Like, there's this, like, it's such a distinct mold that there's no masking it. So it only kind of works as Blaster, unfortunately. And I'm letting it through based mostly on the fact that, you know, it's still nice colors, but it's certainly not, you know, the cleanest of them. Bruticus, this is a hysterical one. So we thought, let's do a repaint of Cybertron Scourge, and we'll do it as the only other three-headed monster we have, which is RID Bruticus. So a non-show character who was a leftover Beast Machines mold that they pulled out of mothballs just for the sake of filling out the Robots in Disguise line, now has a big ultra-class figure. The colors are okay. He is kind of a toxic-looking dragon in the bright reds, yellows, and purples. Truth be told, it's not terribly different than the colors he had before, but it's arranged differently enough to be a little bit more, a little bit weirder. The gold dragon head's also kind of odd. You know, it's not the best look. It's not the best look. I feel like there's way more interesting things you could have done. Like, a lot of these that you're going to see in here are like, they did Legends class versions and then they did full-size versions. You know, like, I believe there is a Legends Blades that is, you know, kind of similar to how that worked, but with how Evac's repaint worked, because it's using the Evac Legends class. I really would have preferred them to just do Triptychon the same way they did that. The mold would have looked great in black and, you know, in like a dull, like a dark gray and purple. No, guess not. The next one up is Countdown, and this is hysterical because it is an ultra class figure. It's a big $30 figure from the mid 2000s that is an homage to a Micromaster from G1. So you've taken this lunar rover that came with a rocket base, and you've mashed the two together so he is the big rocket carrier. And again, I think this color scheme works. I mean, yes, it's basically the same color scheme as Blade, so maybe I'm partial to the red, black, and white. But I think this does enough. I think this does enough to kind of push me away from just seeing Red Alert in the mold. That's the biggest distinction here. Like, when you can come up with a color scheme and apply it in a way that makes me go, I don't see Red Alert anymore, I see Countdown. That's where you start getting to a really good point, and I start really enjoying the repaint. And I think that's a pretty good application of it. Dark Wind. Okay, so this is supposed to be G1 Dark Wing, but thanks to the terror that flaps in the night, we can't use that name anymore. So Dark Wind it is, and honestly, this Silverbolt mold makes a pretty good take on that toy. So G1 Darkwing, really not a intricate transformer by any stretch of the imagination, very much like a simplified late G1 toy where most of the vehicle mode's hanging off of his back. So this is a fairly appropriate mold to use for it. It's a pretty decent job. It's honestly a pretty decent job. I mean, I think I want to put it up there. It's just, I should note at this point, because we are going with repaints as the thing that we are talking about here, we are judging the quality of the repaint, not only in how good the color scheme works, but also in the fact that it just works well on that mold. How clever is it? How well applied is it? So, we're going to see some weird mix-ups here. Quality of toy does not play a factor in this particular tier list. We are simply judging a book by its cover and going with what looked the best. Which at this point brings us to Durge. You want to take one of my favorite molds and give it a super weird color scheme. Alright, we're talking about Durge from the Cybertron Starscream mold. This one always felt so weird. This one always felt so weird to me. I mean, it's kind of works. It's kind of okay. I mean, it's Starscream being repainted as another Seeker, but you know, without the cone head, I'm not getting Durge, and obviously the silhouette's completely off since since the wings are on the arms, not the legs. It just, I don't know. Like this one is like it's like low midsection. Like it was weird. What was weird about this is that across all the different versions of that Starscream mold, like especially going in, if you count like the titaniums along with it, you could technically put together a whole team of Seekers in that design, but they were all over the place as far as just color scheme or size classes. It's color scheme too, but I think that's obvious with those. Drag Strip from Classics Mirage, and this is just a pretty obvious one. Let's just repaint the IndyCar into the other IndyCar. But it kind of works in a super weird way. Like, again, like just like Mirage, it makes for a very anorexic looking version of the G1 character. But it looks good in those colors. The purple, yellow, and black work really, really well. And there is something about the shape of that mold that just kind of works. It just kind of works for some of the more villainous characters. I don't know why. But I do think it is a really cool take on this mold. I think it looks really, really good. Good enough, I'm probably going to put it in Holy Grail. It's a super pretty toy. Now we're going to get into some other ones that are less discussable. So this is Drop Shot, a repaint of Cybertron Defense Scattershot. And in vehicle mode, this one's okay. It's kind of beige in color, which gives you kind of like a desert, you know, military vehicle kind of vibe. But then that robot mode color scheme has never looked good to me. It's a lot of brown on the torso, this like light, like lilac purple kind of color, like some dark green thrown in. It really feels like, you know, what plastic colors haven't we used this year? Let's just throw them all onto one toy just to like meet some weird quota. I think it's an ugly color scheme. Like, I will defend the vehicle mode, but even then I'll tell you the vehicle mode's kind of dull looking because there's really nothing breaking up all the beige. Repaints go. I think this one's pretty ugly. I really just do not like how this toy looked at all. We've seen way better repaints of that mold too, so. Alright, Hardhead. This was weird. It's weird redoing an Onslaught that's only kind of G1 Onslaught into a Autobot Headmaster with no new head, by the way. It's Onslaught's head as Hardhead. Gotta remember, in the mid-2000s and the late 2000s, they didn't really know just how much of a collector's market they had for older characters, especially things that were more obscure than the 84 cast. So that made them a little bit gun-shy about going all in on things like a Headmaster, or even to put the budget forward to give him a new, more accurate head. I can remember one of the earliest upgrade sets that ever got made for Transformers was to take that head and replace it with a G1 Hardhead's head. That was one of the earliest upgrade sets I can remember. You know, they're up there with like the replacement parts for Classics Cliff Jumper. Now that said, it still looks pretty good. I'm gonna admit I'm biased because of the green, but I do think it still looks good on the mold. It's still military colors, so the vehicle mode works. I think the best part about this was how many people joked about it being some kind of lost Ninja Turtle transformer, which of course we have now, ironically enough. Okay, this is Heavy Load. And again, this one's a little bit more interesting because it has this like pale green color going on in robot mode, but a lot of that goes away. The vehicle mode is actually dominated by the yellow. So it does a nice little like color transformation trick that I always like when a transformer does. It's a neat little way of like like really making the robot feel like it came out of nowhere. Sorry, man, I have been talking all day. My throat has just about had it. You'll excuse me if I make noises. The overall color scheme is fine. I mean, I don't think it's too thrilling, but I do think it's overall, it's okay. We've certainly seen worse on this list already. So I'll right now put it at top of retail release. I think it's going to end up somewhere closer to the middle by the time all is said and done. Okay, here's the interesting thing. So we actually had a few, I believe, Target exclusive titanium repaints that were done under the Universe banner. So we're going to include those because some of them are actually interesting to talk about. Like this one. This is Hot Zone. Obviously an homage to, G1 Hotspot. Now in vehicle mode that works perfectly fine. It's a light, it's a sky blue fire truck. That's Hotspot. The robot mode is interesting because even though it does lean closer to Hotspot with a black head, you think back. Once upon a time, BotCon wanted to deliver unto us a repaint of RID Optimus Prime as Defensor, with a brand new Defensor-inspired head, but in Hotspot-inspired colors for the main body and vehicle mode. That never happened, but this toy did, and this is as close to that as we would ever get. So it is actually a way of actually owning an unreleased BotCon design, weirdly enough. So it's a kind of a cool, like, unintentional historical piece, unless it was intentionally homaging that canceled toy, in which case, okay, it's still a fascinating thing to exist. That said, it looks pretty. It's a nice deco on it. It actually succeeds in actually bringing out Hotspot a little bit. Alright, we are dealing with a pair of Leo Primes now, and just the way that these were ordered, we're talking about the straight-up G1 color scheme first. So, we should really be talking about these in the other direction, but we'll go with it now. They retooled the head to do the Leo Prime version, which you see on the right there. However, for the current version, since they had that mold already, they just decided, let's just do straight-up Optimus Prime colors. Why not? The Optimus Prime head's on there, so yeah, we got a very red-blue lion out of it. And it don't work. It does not work. It's great if you have a Cybertron Optimus Prime and you really want a Savage Claw mode that just blends in perfectly. It's okay for that, but on its own, the lion mode just does not look good in the red and the blue. It makes Optimus Prime feel very forced in. It's just not a great appearance. Not a fan. Now, the original release that was done as a Lio Convoy homage, that one does come across a little bit better. But of course, that's because you have the more traditional White Lion Beast mode that looks far better than a bright red lion with a silver mane. I'm still not crazy about how this one looks because it does rearrange a lot of how the toy is designed from the original Lio Convoy. It's kind of like the blaster. It kind of works, it kind of doesn't. They did retool the head, so there is a little bit more effort put into this one. But for the most part, it's okay. It just looks a little bit odd. The colors are fine, but it's just not quite there. You know, it's half and half. You know what? I'll bump it up. Let's go top of retail. Just because I'm just not a fan of that. Like, I get what they're going for, but that mold really only does it for me in one mode. The other mode, the robot mode, just looks a little bit too odd. Now we get into Megatron. This is a repaint of the Classics Megatron done in the Special Edition Universe toys. I should mention that's where Dragstrip came from too. They did a run of toys that were released at like specialty markets. I can remember like some like mall department store got these in. I can't even remember which one, but it was a really random release. And like they came in this like black box with like the metallic paint, like a character art on the box, and it was Velcroed so you could open it up. They really wanted to feel like a high-class release. And Megatron shows a really large amount of paint apps in order to convey that. So he really does feel like a premium release. Now, the mold itself is still the weirdness of the Classics Megatron mold, but it really does work in his traditional color scheme. It looks really, really good. I am going to put it very, very high. In fact, I might put it to Holy Grail for now. It's a really pretty figure. I think today it's a very expensive version of that toy to get, but if you can get a hold of it, if you like the Classics Megatron mold, that's the pinnacle of it. That's the best version that came out. It's just a really nice looking toy. Nemesis Prime. Now, we've talked about Nemesis Primes on this channel before, and we've mentioned this one and the failings of this Nemesis Prime. So it's a Black Optimus Prime. Okay, that's well and good, but it's only like half committed to the idea, because not only do you have dark blue playing a part in the figure, replacing the standard blue of Optimus Prime's legs and a few other parts like the head, you're also missing some of the more signature details of Nemesis Prime, and then you're missing the translucent red. They made him translucent blue, which throws the entire thing off. It just doesn't convey Nemesis Prime or Scourge or anything like it's supposed to, just because you're missing those things. It still looks okay because it is a Black Optimus Prime. You know, that's going to look fine. The black and the teal look good. But there's something about just leaving parts dark blue instead of committing to the black, leaving the translucent blue of Classics Optimus Prime without committing to the red or pink, that just really makes it feel half-hearted and really disappointing. Yeah, I mean, I'll put it higher up on the bargain bin level, but it really is a misfire to me. Like, to me, it just does not work. All right, so we have another Onslaught. I love how many ways they tried to make this mold into different characters. They made it into Perceptor because, hey, he's got a thing hanging off his shoulder, like G1 Perceptor did. You know, we saw what they did with the large version to make Countdown. Now we have, well, he's kind of a missile. He's kind of a military truck. Let's make him Onslaught. It's not really Onslaught, though, is it? It's not, it's, the colors aren't really there for him. I mean, it's kind of, but it doesn't have, it's purple. He doesn't have his dark blue. It's not Onslaught. Let's get that across. The colors are still fine, though. It's purples and grays and black. You know, you're not going to really get that color scheme wrong. I do think it's a little bit plain, and it definitely doesn't look like Onslaught, but it's still not a bad look. It's still not a bad deco for that toy, so I will give you credit. It still looks fine. All right, let's talk about a string of Optimus Prime repaints, and we'll start with this weird multi-pack one. So the multi-pack, so there's a weird multi-pack of Cybertron toys, and it's all of the Armada retools. Like the ones that Japan did as 2-packs got individually released in Cybertron. Well, they decided to just straight up re-release them with no change to their deco, and they put a Deluxe Optimus Prime in there, but the Deluxe Optimus Prime actually did have some repaint to it, mostly to push the design closer to G1 Optimus Prime. So the forearms were painted red, except for his fists that are blue. More of the chest was painted red to try and get that G1 Prime in there. It feels like it's taking that toy's identity, like Armada Prime's identity, away. But at the very least, they tried to give it a little bit of a different deco, and admittedly, it doesn't look bad. You know, it doesn't look bad. It's still Optimus Prime deco, but they did something. They did something. Nothing terribly exciting, though. So that's like right in the middle of retail release. That's nothing like terribly thrilling. Oh, but if you want terribly thrilling, oh, Special Edition Optimus Prime. Oh my god, it's so different. It's the Classics Deluxe Optimus Prime, weird spin gimmick and all. They barely changed this toy. I feel like it is, like, considering the rest of the Special Edition toys either went out of their way to create vastly different color schemes from their previous releases. I really feel like this is a letdown. I really feel like this was a missed opportunity to do something interesting. Do a white Ultra Magnus, you know? Do a Nemesis Prime as a deluxe. You could have done that. Throw something weird like a Delta Magnus, you know? We didn't really have Delta Magnus at the time, but like the powered convoy existed. Some repaints existed you could have pulled from. This is basically, it's almost just a re-release. It's almost a package refresh. There's so little. I'm moving it down to Flea Market because it's just so little of it's changed. You know, it just feels like a waste of space. And then we get to a Titanium Optimus Prime repaint. And this one is, again, really weird. You know, things like blue shoulders are not something you really see on an Optimus Prime. It's heavily painted. I'll give it that. But it is just kind of like shifting colors around on Prime for the sake of doing it, just so it looks somewhat different. I don't know, it feels like another lost opportunity, you know? Like, at the very least with the Armada Optimus, they took it as a chance to cast it as a different Optimus Prime, to bring some more familiarity to the mold for those who are, you know, more casual in the fans. But when it comes to this Titanium, it just feels like changing it for the sake of changing it, and it doesn't really mesh. It doesn't really come together. I think it ends up kind of down there with the Leo Prime, and it's just like, it's Optimus just because, you know, which doesn't really work out for me. Not big on that one. Overkill. This brings us to the last of the special edition releases, and oh, I think this one is so pretty. This is the version of Classics Grimlock I wish I still had, because there's just something about that slate blue and white color scheme that I think looks so good. In the Beast mode, in the Dino mode, it really just does look like a super evolved version of Soundwave's old Dino cassette. and it's brilliant. I love it. I love how it looks. It's awesome. And then turn it into the robot mode. It looks so distinct and unique. I really like how this toy looks. It's a brilliant job. Brilliant job. I might even move that over blades. It's a toy that shouldn't work, but it does. It's a great figure. I mean, I already like the figure, but it's a great repaint of it, too. It just hits. It hits. It shouldn't hit, but it does, and I love it for that. Alright, I need to check my notes here just to make sure I get the right name. Overload. Yeah, just a name dump, because this ain't any Overload we've seen. This is the better repaint of Cybertron, Cybertron Defense Scattershot. We have green, and this time in the vehicle mode, there is like a digital camo design going on, so the vehicle mode does not look as boring, which is good. The two-tone green in the robot mode, you know, immediately is going to win my love. Yeah, I think this one, I think he wears this color scheme a lot better than he wore the previous one. Yeah, Drop Shot is just nasty looking. Oh, yeah, Overload. Where do you go? Where do you go? You're not retail release. You're too pretty for that. I feel weird putting him next, just lumping the green repaints together. But I guess that kind of shows my bias toward green. I know. You're lucky I'm not putting him in Holy Grail, because that's where I really want him to go. Don't worry. We'll get there. Hey, look, it's the Powerglide they should have done from the start. I already talked before in the first countdown, the first tier list. It's so weird. It's so weird that when they already did a gray and red jet for the Autobots at the Ultra class level, that they would decide to do Powerglide as a gray jet instead of his traditional red. Why would you do that? Why would you, double up on your gray jets at the Ultra class? They did a repaint of it that brought him into its classic colors, and the mold looks so much better like this. The other one, it only really feels like Powerglide because he has the wings sticking up from his shoulders, and he has that head, and the head was red. But everything else just kind of felt like Powerglide was a headmaster for somebody else. Now it just feels like a really buff, overpowered Powerglide. Like Powerglide got the Matrix of Leadership. And it works. It looks way, way better. You never should have done that other one in the first place. Yeah, most improved student so far. Ratbat. Oh, what to say about this? So the mold itself, I thought, was unrepaintable because the shape and the design was so unique, especially if you were going to keep that head. Bacon got away with it for Scourge and the sweeps because they retooled the head. But to reuse the head that existed on the mold, that one I thought, that's a trick. I don't think that's happening. And then someone had the brilliant idea of actually taking inspiration from Dreamwave Ratbat to create this toy. And now you've just made it sing on a level it didn't before. Purple and gold and black is already a beautiful color scheme. And then when it's done so cleverly to convey that modern version of Ratbat, that what would eventually be known as the Senator Ratbat look, that's really good. I'm going to move it one step higher. That's really good. That's a brilliant repaint. That launched 100 different ideas for other Ratbats that we could have. Love that one. Love that one. This is Red Alert, believe it or not. So in their lovely attempt to name dump as much as they could, Red Alert as a repaint of Legends Hotshot. This, in vehicle mode, it kind of works. They repainted his cyber key slot toward the back to kind of look like a light bar. But in the robot mode, it misses. It misses a lot. I mean, aside from just it doesn't convey Red Alert at all. What really kills it for me is this just swath of red paint that covers his forehead and his face. So not like the entire forehead and crown like Hotshot, just the front. And then the face is left the exact same red. It just looks ugly. It looks ugly. It looks cheap. It just don't look like Red Alert. It just feels sloppy. Roadbuster. Now, I have mentioned a great many times on this channel, Roadbuster is a very difficult color scheme to hit because the brown, the military green, and the orange don't really want to play together, so you really have to be good at balancing it out in order to make it work. This toy is not balanced out. This, I do think, is one of the uglier presentations of that color scheme. You know, I don't know. He looks like, I don't know. He looks like a forest came to life. And not in a fun, like, I'm playing a druid in D&D kind of way. It's just an ugly mix. I really don't think it blends well. I don't think it hits the mark. Yeah, it's just, yeah, it's a nasty color scheme on that mold. Like, I'm sorry. I'm sitting next to the BotCon Springer that a friend of mine recently gifted me. Yeah, that mold can be repainted into things that will work really well on it. That ain't one of them, though. Silver Streak, the artist formerly known as Blue Streak. We don't have to talk about this one because it's Blue Streak, you know, like it's black, it's red, it's silver. I mean, it looks good. It looks really good. There's really no need to discuss it. It's very familiar to everybody at this point. This is Skyfall. I believe based on an old G2 Cyberjet, if I remember right. And I mentioned before with the blades. Black and red is a really hard color scheme to get wrong. I think Skyfall gets it wrong. And I will tell you why, and I will point you back toward my premium price list to look at Darkwind. Because Darkwind does something that actually makes this work. His jet on his back is a different color than his body. When you do the wings in the back in the same black and red as the rest of his robot mode body, a lot of Skyfall gets lost in it. It's hard for me to distinguish where this robot really is. And it just doesn't feel like it's using the colors in the correct mix. On its own, like independently, and in jet mode, yeah, jet mode is fine. Jet mode looks pretty. But I really don't think they took proper advantage of the mold to make it work. It really just feels like they just slapped red and black and hoped that it would work, and I don't think it does. I will put it high bargain bin because the vehicle mode still works, but that robot mode really needed a distinct color palette. I don't think they did it any favors by just making it all just like random red and black all over. So Smokescreen is one we could breeze over to because we all know Smokescreen at this point. The weird thing about him is that the color layout on him has changed pretty distinctly because of the limitations of the mold he's on. And I'm not really a big fan of it. I don't like how much of the gray is overtaken on some of him. So I'm gonna bring him down into the retail level. I like Smokescreen's colors on a normal basis, but there's something about how they had to work the mold in this one that I just feel like missed the mark. How many times have I said "miss the mark" in this one by now? It's like a go-to phrase at this point. Springer. So once again, it is the Cybertron evac mold, and once again, it's a green mold. So I'm a little biased, I will admit. But again, I think this mold wears it really well. This one looks pretty good in these colors. And again, I think this is preferential. But I think both of them work about on the same level. It's just a mold that's really, really adaptable and tends to look good no matter what you do with it. The Shattered Glass Galvatron they did out of this mold, again, looks really, really good. It's just hard to get wrong, and I appreciate it for that. I think the green just looks a little bit better than the red and black, but of course, that's me being biased, but hey, it's my tier list. You're free to disagree. This is a weird one. So this is Legend Starscream done from the Cybertron Thundercracker Legends mold, which means he doesn't have null rays. He has a big cannon sticking off his arm. But weirdly enough, they have done enough of like the color working and the way the mold works to actually convey Starscream fairly well in this figure, which, you know, the original intention behind Cybertron Thundercracker is to be reminiscent of the original Starscream while still in the Seeker mold, while still doing a bit of his own unique thing. So this does make sense to do. It does look okay. It looks okay in a way it really shouldn't. It's a little bit off, but not far enough. I am convinced that that is a Starscream toy. So that's what that kind of repaint is meant to do, and I think it did it. Well, we talk about the real Starscream repaint here, and if we're going by just like quality of repaint, then like what else am I going to say? It's just G1 cartoon color Starscream. They took classic Starscream and undid all the brand new paint job to him. And just made him just straight up standard Starscream. What credit I will give him, however, is how upgraded he actually is. So, you know, for instance, the original classics, in order to make the jet mode look cohesive enough, they left part of his head unpainted. Here, that is not an issue. The entire head is now black. So, a little bit of a black patch in vehicle mode, but the robot mode looks better. The sides of the chest and the front, like, edge, where the landing gear would fold out, that's been painted, so the chest looks a lot more solid. The face is the correct, like, charcoal gray, gunmetal gray. That all works. So, it is kind of like the Armada Optimus, you know, where it's just Starscream again, but it's more reminiscent of the original. It looks good, but, you know, again, but it's not really pushing a boundary or anything, is it? So, yeah. That's where I'm standing. I think that's fair. Storm Cloud is another interesting one. So you're going with another standard Decepticon color scheme, the black and the gray and the purple. And there's nothing wrong with that. Looks fine. It's really hard to repaint a toy like Powerglide and make me think of a different character or convince me that it's someone different. I don't think this one does it, but I still think the color scheme looks good. So, you know, it's the head. It's the head. Powerglide's head is so unique to him, I don't think you're going to ever repaint him and make me go, that's someone new. So, I'm going to put him high up on the retail release. Is that a little bit too mean? Let's put him top. Because I do think the color scheme works well. It's not conveying a new character, but it looks nice. Thrust. Another titanium repaint. So, it's weird. So, when you put Cybertron Starscream in Durge colors, I think it looks really, really weird. When you put Titanium Starscream, or I guess Thundercracker technically, in Thrust colors, it should also have that same effect. I think it looks really good, though. I think it looks really, really good. I don't know why that color scheme hits so hard when the Durge misses so much. But I like it. I like it a lot. I want to premium him. I want to premium him right now. Which is exactly what I will do. That's a very pretty toy. If I wasn't sick of the titanium Starscream design at that point. Yeesh. Treadbolt. This is another weird pull from G1 in order to make an excuse to repaint a figure. It's not bad. Like, weirdly enough, if you look at him now, you'd swear he was like classic Sentinel Prime from Transformers 1. That's the vibe he gives today, completely by accident. But it's not a bad color scheme. It's yellow, it's blue, it's kind of an off brown in the robot mode. It's okay. It's okay. Again, maybe a little uninspired. You know, it looks good, but, you know, it's maybe it could have been a little bit more thrilling given it's the base mold for it. And that's going to take us to our final one, which is Vector Prime. Now, Vector Prime here is going for the last Autobot from the Marvel Comics. His original sculpt is somewhat designed to be inspired by that toy. His original design is kind of inspired by the last Autobot. This is just kind of cementing it. And here's the thing. In vehicle mode, it's super pretty. It's black and silver. It looks so different from his standard one, and it looks really, really nice. You get him in robot mode, this brown color just overwhelms all the good that black and silver is doing. And I think it overall hurts the toy. And what doesn't help is how they decided to color it, because yes, it's the last Autobot who has this like ancient brown look to him, but look at the robot mode, like the legs are completely unpainted. It's just solid brown from hips all the way down. And it's like he's wearing like brown slacks or brown trousers. It's weird, you know? Like the black and silver is doing so much lifting, but that brown I don't think was the right call. Last Autobot homage or not, it just should have looked better than this. I will put it somewhere. I feel like it's kind of somewhere where Durge is, you know, where it kind of hits and kind of works, kind of doesn't. I just feel like it's, I don't know, like there's just a little bit too ugly for me to put it any higher than that, in spite of what it's going for. And that is the repaints of Universe 2.0. Most of them, at least. Like I said, we left a few out for the sake of time, but this is the majority of the major releases, so you get the drift. You get the general idea. So, as always, you are free to discuss and disagree in the comments below. That's your prerogative. As for me, this is the last of my recording I need to do before the convention. I'm gonna go rest my voice now. But thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.